What happens when loyalty, murder, and rap fame collide? YNW Bortlen just flipped the game with a plea deal, and his next words could decide if YNW Melly ever walks free again. From multiple life sentences, down to just 10 years. Sounds like the deal of the century, right? But here's the catch: YNW Bortlen's decision might be the final nail in YNW Melly's coffin. They were best friends, brothers in music, but now, one decision in the courtroom could turn that friendship into betrayal. Did YNW Bortlen just sacrifice YNW Melly to save himself? The YNW Melly case just got explosive: new charges, new witnesses, and his own co-defendant flipping on him. Is this the end of Melly's fight for freedom? When courtroom drama meets rap culture, things get complicated fast, and that's exactly what's happening in the YNW Melly case. Recently, YNW Bortlen, also known as Cortland Henry, made headlines after agreeing to a plea deal that has the entire hip-hop community talking. Bortlen had been facing several life sentences, but instead of spending the rest of his life behind bars, he accepted a deal: 10 years in prison followed by 6 years of probation. On paper, it looks like a win for him. But the catch? As part of his plea, he also signed a proffer agreement, meaning he has to sit down with prosecutors and explain, in detail, what actually happened the night two men, Sock Chaser and Juvie, lost their lives. This is where things get messy. Bortlen doesn't have to directly point the finger at YNW Melly, but by describing the events from inside the car, he automatically confirms that there was no drive-by shooting, which undermines Melly's entire defense. In short, whether he says Melly's name or not, his testimony could seal Melly's fate. The case against YNW Melly has already been one of the most high-profile legal battles in hip-hop history, but prosecutors are now tightening their grip in ways that could seal the rapper's fate. New charges, new witnesses, and new cooperation deals are all stacking up, and for the first time, it seems like Melly may be out of options. At the heart of this latest development is Melly's co-defendant and longtime associate, Cortland YNW Bortlen Henry. For years, Bortlen has been painted as the quiet accomplice, the man who was with Melly on the night Sock Chaser and Juvie were killed, and the man who helped orchestrate the alleged cover-up. While Melly's first trial ended in a mistrial, prosecutors haven't let up, and their renewed focus on witness tampering has given them a much sharper weapon to use against him: the new charges. The state of Florida recently filed 6 new charges against Melly and 2 others allegedly connected to the YNW crew. These include tampering with a witness, directing the activities of a criminal organization, solicitation or conspiracy to commit tampering, unlawful use of a two-way communication device. A number of these charges carry the possibility of life in prison, regardless of the outcome in the double murder case. That means even if Melly were somehow acquitted of killing Sock Chaser and Juvie, he could still spend the rest of his life behind bars for the alleged efforts to silence witnesses. The most explosive piece of this puzzle involves Mariah Hamilton, Melly's ex-girlfriend. During his first trial, she was considered one of the state's most important witnesses, but she fled the United States under pressure and refused to testify. Prosecutors now allege Melly orchestrated her disappearance through coded jail communications passed along by friends and family members. When Hamilton recently attempted to return to the U.S., she was arrested at Miami International Airport and immediately faced a stark choice: testify against Melly or remain behind bars. She reportedly agreed to cooperate in exchange for her freedom, giving the state one of the most critical witnesses they had been missing. Bortlen's role and the snitch stigma. But the real game-changer might be Bortlen himself. In a dramatic twist, prosecutors believe Bortlen could become the key witness who validates much of their new evidence against Melly. During a raid of his home, investigators found notes and sketches allegedly detailing the jurors in Melly's first trial, descriptions of where they sat and what they looked like. To prosecutors, this suggested an attempt to influence or intimidate the jury, further strengthening their case for tampering. Florida courts have already expressed concern for Bortlen's safety. Officials worry that, as someone with inside knowledge, he could be targeted before he even gets the chance to testify. In fact, one email revealed that prosecutors requested his deposition be taken within 30 days, just to ensure his testimony is preserved. That level of urgency speaks volumes about how crucial his cooperation could be. Still, Bortlen has tried to distance himself from the snitch label. In recorded jail calls, he insists people are twisting the story, claiming he hasn't betrayed anyone. To him, maintaining his reputation is about survival, not just behind bars, but also for the day he eventually walks free. In the world of rap, where authenticity and loyalty define careers, being branded a rat could end his ambitions before they even begin. Melly's family and supporters. While prosecutors are building their case, Melly's mother, Jamie King, has been fighting her own battle. In multiple interviews, she's accused Broward County Jail of mistreating her son, cutting off his phone privileges, and withholding his mail. She argues that even convicted inmates are allowed to communicate with loved ones, while her son, who has not yet been convicted, is being silenced unfairly. "My son has not been convicted of anything," she said in one interview. "They won't even let him see his own mail. They're making up their own rules, and it makes me feel completely helpless as a mother." To Jamie, this treatment is more than unfair. It's proof that prosecutors are stacking the deck against Melly by cutting him off from the outside world. But to prosecutors, the restrictions are evidence-based. They argue that Melly's communications were being used to influence witnesses, and that cutting off his phone access was necessary to prevent further tampering. The rap community reacts. These developments have sparked intense debate across the rap industry. Some figures, like Charleston White, have been brutally unsympathetic. "This is what YNW Melly should be living like," White said. "He don't deserve special treatment just because he's a famous rapper. Homie, when you take a life, you don't get the right to complain about being mistreated." Others, however, have shown compassion for Melly's family. Rap veteran Boozy Badass publicly expressed support for Jamie King after meeting her in person. "I met his mama while he was locked up, and she's real. She's a good woman, and she's stressed out. When I saw her, it reminded me of what my own mom went through when I was locked up. That pain is real." These contrasting voices highlight the divide in public opinion. Some believe Melly is being unfairly targeted, while others see his situation as the natural consequence of a violent lifestyle. What comes next? With Mariah Hamilton now cooperating, Bortlen facing pressure to testify, and new charges carrying life sentences, Melly's legal battle has entered its most dangerous phase yet. His first trial ended in a mistrial, but prosecutors are determined not to let that happen again. If the jury believes the tampering evidence, and if key witnesses testify as expected, Melly could be convicted even without a murder verdict. In other words, his freedom doesn't just depend on the question of whether he killed Sack Chaser and Juvie. It now hinges on whether the state can prove he tried to manipulate the system itself. For YNW Melly, once a rising star in the rap world, the walls are closing in. And for fans, the question remains, is he the victim of an unfair prosecution or the mastermind of one of hip-hop's most shocking crimes? But commentators like DJ academics and even attorneys connected to the case have been blunt. This is essentially a Ghana-style plea deal. It doesn't mean Bortlen is a government witness in the traditional sense, but it does force him to tell a factual story that lines up with the charges. And by admitting to accessory after the fact, he acknowledges a crime was committed and that he helped cover it up. Even the judge seemed surprised, calling it one of the most remarkable deals he's ever seen. From multiple life sentences down to just a decade in prison, it's no wonder people are calling it the greatest plea deal of all time. But for YNW Melly, this changes everything. Once Bortlen speaks, prosecutors will have a first-hand account from inside the car. Whether or not he drops Melly's name, the details alone could damage the defense beyond repair. As one lawyer bluntly put it, Bortlen has bitten the cheese. In other words, he's flipped. And while some see it as betrayal, others understand why. When you're staring at life in prison, suddenly 10 years doesn't sound so bad. For now, all eyes are on what Bortlen will reveal. His words could decide not only his own future, but also whether YNW Melly ever walks free again. For months, people wondered if YNW Bortlen would eventually flip on his co-defendant. Many thought it would happen sooner, but he held out longer than expected. Now, with his plea deal officially in place, it looks like the moment has arrived, and what he says next could make or break YNW Melly's future. Even rapper 6ix9ine chimed in, pointing out that Bortlen's agreement with prosecutors means Melly is cooked. Offset also reacted online, tweeting, "Damn, Melly really getting snitched on by his best friend. Free that boy, he's been locked up for way too long." The courtroom exchange left no doubt. The judge made it clear that as part of the negotiated deal, prosecutors will want Bortlen to sit down for an interview. The judge stressed that his answers wouldn't affect the deal, what's signed is signed, but prosecutors will expect details about the crime. So why would Bortlen agree? Because the alternative was brutal. Let's break it down. Without a plea deal, Bortlen faced multiple charges, each carrying mandatory life sentences. With the plea deal, he pleads no contest to accessory charges and tampering, and in return, avoids life and gets 10 years plus probation. It's easy to see why he took it. Most people would when the choice is life versus a decade. But here's where things twist. Many don't realize Melly's own lawyer had already thrown Bortlen under the bus in the first trial. During cross-examination, the defense suggested it was Bortlen, not Melly, who had gunpowder residue on his hands and who lied to investigators. Forensics were even presented showing particles of residue on his hands, tying him closer to the shootings. In other words, Melly's team pointed the finger at him first. This may explain why Bortlen finally accepted the plea. From his perspective, loyalty had already been broken. Digging deeper, old interrogation tapes show that Bortlen was never eager to be part of the situation. When asked directly if he would ever reveal who committed the crime, he shook his head no instead of answering out loud, a sign investigators believed showed fear and hesitation. He knew what happened, but clearly didn't want involvement. The bigger issue? Prosecutors already had messages where YNW Melly allegedly admitted to the crime in coded form. What they lacked was a first-hand confirmation from inside the car, something Bortlen can now provide. Melly, meanwhile, had been living with confidence. After his mistrial, he even splurged on a $100,000 chain, certain he'd walk free in his retrial. But with this plea deal in play, that confidence might have been misplaced. The state's strategy was calculated. First, they delayed Melly's retrial into 2027, buying themselves time to lock in Bortlen's cooperation. Then, they filed an order banning any communication between the two, ensuring silence while they worked on the deal. Their goal was simple: separate them, pressure one, and use him against the other. Now, all prosecutors need is for Bortlen to confirm key details, where people were sitting, what really happened, and whether the drive-by story was a cover-up. If he provides that, Melly's defense collapses. In short, Bortlen's decision to save himself may have set the stage for Melly's downfall. What makes the situation even more dangerous for YNW Melly is that his co-defendant, YNW Bortlen, has every reason to cooperate with prosecutors. Evidence found in his own home has only added fuel to the fire. Back in July 2023, Bortlen was arrested on a witness tampering charge. According to the warrant, between April and July, right during Melly's first trial, Bortlen tried to influence or mislead a potential witness who had been called to testify. The timing couldn't have been worse. The warrant lines up exactly with the dates of Melly's jury selection and mistrial. Things got more suspicious when investigators raided Bortlen's house. There, they reportedly found handwritten notes describing jurors from Melly's case, complete with drawings showing where each juror sat in the courtroom and what they looked like. To many, this discovery looked like he was keeping tabs, possibly preparing to interfere if the trial went badly. As DJ Academics put it, it was sloppy. How are you going to keep jury sketches in your house? That's like robbing a store and leaving the surveillance tape in your DVD player. But the evidence against Melly doesn't stop there. Prosecutors are lining up every piece they can, and with Bortlen now locked into a plea deal, he can validate it all. One key question they want answered: why did rapper Fredo Bang pick Melly up from the side of the road the night of the crime, instead of taking him to the hospital like Bortlen did with the others? Digital records show Melly sent location pins around 4:42 a.m. that night, asking to be picked up. These records, prosecutors argue, prove Melly wasn't where he claimed to be. On top of that, they've dug into Melly's social media posts, pointing to gang ties with YSL and coded language in photos. Melly himself was overheard in court snapping at his lawyers, insisting that none of that mattered. "I don't care. I'm not in no gang." They can't prove that. But whether he likes it or not, prosecutors know Bortlen can back up or shut down that evidence during testimony. Then comes another devastating blow. Before his arrest, Melly was close friends with King Von. People in O-Block recalled Von saying Melly once admitted his two friends, Sock Chaser and Juvie, were trying to extort him. That rumor now looms large in the case, especially with prosecutors building a motive. And if that wasn't enough, Melly's ex-girlfriend, Mariah Hamilton, has re-entered the picture. She was supposed to testify in his first trial, but fled the US to avoid taking the stand. Recently, when she tried returning home, she was arrested the moment she landed at Miami International Airport. At her first hearing, the judge gave her a choice: testify against Melly or sit in jail. She agreed to testify, making it one of the worst setbacks yet for Melly's defense. Adding to the trouble, prosecutors say they also have access to her iCloud account, which allegedly contains voicemails and messages from Melly himself pressuring her not to testify, a classic example of witness tampering. All of this paints a grim picture for YNW Melly. Between Bortlen's plea deal, the witness tampering charges, digital evidence, old confessions, and now Hamilton's cooperation, prosecutors seem to be stacking the deck for his retrial. This time, the odds may not be in his favor. The legal storm surrounding YNW Melly just intensified, and this time, the accusations reach far beyond the murders of his two close friends, Sack Chaser and Juvie. Prosecutors have now filed 6 new charges against Melly, whose real name is Jamel Demons, along with 2 others allegedly tied to him. These fresh charges include tampering with a witness, directing the activities of a criminal organization, solicitation or conspiracy to commit tampering, unlawful use of a two-way communication device. A number of these charges carry the possibility of a life sentence upon conviction, regardless of whether Melly is ultimately found guilty in the original double murder case. According to sources from Melly's hometown, the witness tampering rumors were an open secret. Locals claimed it was widely known that Melly played a role in keeping his ex-girlfriend, Mariah Hamilton, from testifying in the first trial. Hamilton reportedly fled the country under pressure, a move that became a key reason why Melly wasn't convicted during that first courtroom battle. Even the father of Juvie spoke out, insisting Melly had been interfering with witnesses from behind bars, using coded language and indirect communication through third parties. Investigators say Melly's tactics went beyond simple phone calls. Reports suggest he passed handwritten notes inside the jail, which were then relayed through multiple people before reaching their final target. Witnesses claim the coded system even included references to pop culture, such as using the nickname Rihanna to stand in for Mariah. The allegations gained even more credibility when Melly's own mother, Jamie King, spoke publicly in interviews. She accused the Broward County Jail of violating her son's rights by cutting off his phone privileges and withholding his mail. "My son has not been convicted of anything," she said emotionally. Even inmates who have been convicted still get the right to use the phone and receive their letters. They won't even let him see his own mail. They're making up their own rules. Prosecutors argue that Melly's restricted privileges are not random punishment, but proof that they have real evidence tying him to attempts at witness tampering using jail communication systems. As legal analysts point out, the jail would never risk multi-million-dollar lawsuits by cutting off an inmate's rights unless they had documented reasons backed by hard evidence. Jamie King described feeling powerless as a mother, explaining that seeing her son write statements about fearing for his life has been devastating. "It's heartbreaking. It makes me feel completely helpless. I don't think it's fair. Someone needs to hold this jail accountable." The situation sparked heated reactions across the hip-hop community. Controversial commentator Charleston White bluntly stated that Melly deserves no sympathy. "This is what YNW Melly should be living like. He shouldn't get special treatment just because he's a famous rapper. Homie, when you take a life, you ain't got no right to complain about being mistreated. You chose that life." On the other hand, rapper Boozy Badass shared a more compassionate perspective after meeting Jamie King. "I met his mama while he was locked up, and she's real, bro. She's a good woman, and I could see how stressed out she is. When I saw her, it reminded me of what my own mom went through when I was locked up. That pain is real." This clash of perspectives between those who believe Melly deserves harsh treatment and those empathizing with his family highlights just how polarizing this case has become. With 6 new charges hanging over his head, including counts that could put him behind bars for life, YNW Melly's future looks darker than ever. And with Mariah Hamilton back in the US under legal pressure to testify, prosecutors may now hold the missing piece they need to finally seal his fate in the next trial.